Yeah, I did.
Good for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't feel bad. Mr. Riddle
Thank
been over
you.
there too, on that seat.
Oh,
He had to do it.
I had to do it. Yeah.
See, Riddle's baby.
Yeah.
A baby can do it if you put him up to it, right?
Well, yeah.
Good thing I got IT at.
Oh no, this is my fourth.
Carolina and
See, I
Adriana.
tried to get the grip for the double points in the afternoon, but that did not work.
Hey, how are you?
Hello, Dr. Cesario.
Are they coming, Brandon?
Nope, they haven't voted. We
Oh.
gotta vote them in. I'm gonna get started.
Oh, okay. All right. Both of them?
Yes.
All right.
All right. It is 6:03. I'd like to call to order the June 6, 2023 budget workshop number 2. If I can have a roll call, please.
Mr. Riddle,
Present.
Mr. McBride,
Present.
Ms. Hannah,
Yes.
Ms. Gonzalez,
Before you guys say yes, I want to actually vote you
Yes.
in. Okay. Oh, that was it?
no,
I got it.
Ms. Fabian,
Present.
okay, Ms. Lindsay,
Here.
President Ewing.
Here, so we do have a quorum that is in the room. We have 2 board members that are requesting to participate remotely. While this is a committee meeting, I want to make sure that we officially vote in order to allow them to participate remotely, although no votes will be taken. Both are allowable reasons. One is due to work, other due to illness. And so at that point, do I have a motion to
I'll make a motion.
allow Ms. Fabian and Ms.
Second.
Gonzalez to participate remotely?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Riddle, second by Ms. Lindsay. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. You guys are now participating remotely. And so we have all board members present, 2 by phone and 5 in the room. Let the record reflect. All right, first up is item 3A, approval of the May 11, 2023 minutes.
Motion to approve.
Second. Motion to approve by Mr. Riddle, second by Ms. Hannah. Any comments or questions, corrections to the minutes?
I do want to just commend whoever took those minutes. They were very accurate and on point, and I like that, where it captured all board members' conversations, and that's what, as far as me as a vice president, that's what I expect of the minutes.
Thank you, Ms. Hannah. Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you, Ms. Harrison. With that, we got a motion and a second. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Minutes are approved. All right. This is our budget workshop number 2. Again, this is one of the most important functions of the board. We have one more budget workshop that is scheduled before official board action. So again, we've received the original budget. We've had time to digest it. There have been some slight modifications, which Ms. Polk will walk us through. And same, I want to get through it, have a healthy conversation, but this is actually one of our meetings that should go relatively, when I say quickly, right? We'll do what the work that it needs to do, but there's not a ton of new information being presented tonight. Go ahead, Ms. Polk. And I do want to thank Deputy Cesario, who is sitting in for the superintendent this evening. So, thank you.
Good evening, board president, board members, colleagues, and community. As the board president said, this is budget workshop 2. We have worked collaboratively with the division leaders to submit this budget to you today. We are going to the agenda. We've highlighted each of the areas that's traditionally on our budget calendar, but most of that information is going to be covered in the presentation. So you probably will not have a pullout for those because it'll be included in the presentation. The only area that we will not have in the presentation is HR position control. And so hopefully you had an opportunity to look at those, and if you have any questions, we'll entertain those questions. But that's the only thing that's not in the presentation. And then, of course, afterwards we have food service here who is going to discuss their information. So Mr. Lattimore as well as Mr. Luosa is going to present on our behalf, and we're here to answer any questions that you might have that they can answer. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the board, colleagues, and our community members, both here and those at home. First slide. Our budget for the last 7 to 8 years has embodied strategic planning, driven towards need and equity. Our example, you've seen in various forms, but for our community, may not have seen it. Equality, everybody gets an equal share. That's the old rollover budget system. And then you got X amount of dollars, now what do I do with it? Well, we've embraced the philosophy as a district of looking at equity. What are the individual needs? In this particular case, we have our 4 students. The bikes that they're using or their needs are different. And we meet their needs by providing different types of bikes, which is synonymous with resources. Next slide, please. As Ms. Polk indicated, this is our second of 3 budget workshops. You've seen this information before. We'll note for you those areas that have been refined and changed, and we obviously are preparing for FY 23-24 school year. Next slide, please. One of the critical vetting processes that we have is we have what we call the Strategic Budget Committee. Board members, we had 2. We have senior staff from the district, community members, parents. They look at the budget and act as critical friends during the process and help us to refine our budget as we move forward. You can see there we conducted that in April, and you can see the membership there in the 3rd paragraph for our community may be looking. We were fortunate enough to get Mr. Bembry, who's been with us for 3 cycles. Very good facilitator, so we pushed forward and he kept us focused. Next slide, please. The principles that we focus on our budget. Transparency. The schools deal with our leadership. The departments deal with their leadership. It focuses up through the divisions, and we share that as a district with our community, to wit, the comment I made previously with the strategic committee. Equity. Each building is different. Some things are common, but some things may be unique. So we try to provide resources to meet the individualized needs. That's what our deputies are involved with, and also for our projects on the operations side. Sustainability. We cannot afford to go broke. We have to be there tomorrow for our kids. So what we do, we have to look forward to make sure that what we are engaging in, we can also provide for resources for the future. And as we like to say in the DOD, bang for the buck, return on investment. We want to make sure that what we invest, the seeds we plant, can grow for the future. Next slide, please. Here's our budget calendar. You've seen this before. I'll note we notify our schools several months before the end of this fiscal year, December specifically. The train is coming. So they're aware, they can prioritize, they relook at their processes. Are there things that we need, things we need to change? So tweaks can be made, and anything needs to be purchased can be purchased, so it can have an academic impact during the school year. You can see our budget workshops, 1, 2 tonight. We'll have a third one that will be utilized also to share with our community as well as you. Once that budget workshop is over, we will finalize our document prepared for the public. We notify them in the newspaper, so they are free to come in and look at our budget in the ISB format. And finally, we will come back to you at the first meeting in September for a budget adoption. With that, I'm going to yield the floor. Mr. Lawoza is going to guide you through levies and the structures and requests made by the individual departments and divisions. Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Lattimore. Good evening. The next slide is the tax levy, actually the tax extension. And to the right is tax year 2021, which notes an extension of $52,798,510. And that is actually taking the number in the bottom right of $56,842 and subtracting the bonds and interest, which is where we don't levy for, the county clerk levies that. So that totals $52,798, and for tax year 2022 on the left side, you'll see that over in the capped line it says $52,798,505. So we've kept the property taxes level to what we can to what we have control over. All right, next slide, please. All right, we've got 3 different types of funding. We've got local, state, and federal. And if we go to the next slide, it will delineate the major sources of those revenues for the Ed Fund. $59,123,332.88, or 23%, is coming from the federal arena. The 19%, or 48 million, is coming from local, which is mainly property taxes and CPPRT, which is known as Corporate Personal Property Replacement Tax. And of course, our most abundant 152 million is coming from the state, mostly the evidence-based funding. A couple of bigger pieces in there is early childhood at about 3.5 million, and special education claims.
All right. Question for clarification, Ms. Hannah?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Toward the federal level funding,
Mm-hmm.
is that for this school year, or last school year, or
This is the projection for
upcoming?
24 next year.
next year,
Yes.
without ESSER?
Without,
without the ESSER?
no, ESSER's in there. ESSER is going to be part of the federal. You see ESSER at the bottom of the federal list of funds.
Okay. Okay, I missed that.
All right, we'll go into the next slide. So those three pieces of the pie basically result in revenues for the Ed Fund, Fund 10, of $260,887,000. That's noted on the second line that says projected revenue by fund. The slide before breaks it down by local, federal, and state. This is the grand total of the revenues by fund. So we've got, on this slide, we've got Fund 10, 20, 40, and 70. 10 is Education Fund, 20 is Operations and Maintenance, Fund 40 is Transportation, and Fund 70 is Working Cash. These four funds make up what we call the operating funds. And these are the funds that our financial profile is based off of.
And when I was looking at this, my eyes kind of grew big because they were in red. Could you please explain why they're in red?
The red would be reductions, or expenses are usually reductions of cash. So we're showing reductions of cash in these funds in red. So revenues are plus, expenditures are minus. And projected beginning fund balance is a positive, so positives and negatives. So in order to get to the projected fund balance of 630.24, for example, Fund 10, we're subtracting the expenditures from the revenues. So the expenditures are $285 million. We're subtracting that from the revenues of $260 million. Subtracting that from projected beginning balance of $82 million, or adding that to $82 million. It's transferring out $35 million of transfers to get down to that projected ending fund balance of $22,500,000 in the Ed Fund. Same process goes with Fund 20, 40, and 70. Over on the right-hand side are the totals. So in the operating fund, total expenditures, $315 million for those four funds. Revenues, $287 million. Projected beginning balances as of July 1st of 2023, $118 million. And we've got proposed transfers out of $47 million. So our estimated ending fund balance for the operating funds, a combined $42,374,000. The next slide will show the other funds. Fund 30, Fund 50 and 51, 60, 90, and Fund 80. Fund 30 is debt service. It's where our bonds and interest are paid from. Fund 50 and 51 is IMRF, Social Security, Medicare. Fund 60 is capital projects. Fund 90 is life safety. And Fund 80 is tort. Same process. We got the projected expenditures on the first line. Grand total for these funds, $53 million. Revenues estimated at $25 million. Projected beginning balance a negative $12,078,000. Budget transfers of $47 million. Projected ending fund balance June 30th of 24, $7.2 million.
So you're going to add the two total.
That'll be on the next slide.
Okay.
And the next slide will do just that, add the operating funds and the other funds to get a total of all funds, $369 million of projected expenditures, $312 million of projected revenues, projected beginning balance as of July of 23, $106 million, and projected ending fund balance, $49,647,000 as of June 30th, 2024.
So we're spending more than we're taking in.
Yes.
So y'all need to quit spending money.
Not when we got a fund balance ending at 49 million.
Look, look,
I
that
just
gotta
wanna
last.
explain that we've been doing that for years. It's the timing of receipts of the money.
I know.
Because the grants are reimbursable, and so that's why we have to monitor our cash levels, because the state doesn't give us our money back at the same time that we're spending it,
I know,
so.
we still need to, cause we got, money is gonna be getting scarce as this ESSER fund money goes away.
Go ahead, Mr. Wilson.
Oh, we got a question back there.
Go ahead, Chad. We have a question from the audience, and then I am going to ask that we hold until the end. But go ahead if we get the microphone.
How much ESSER money did the district receive?
Is that in the presentation?
And how much money directly benefited the children in their education and mental health?
Thank you. That's in the presentation, so they'll go through it.
Right, so
and
we'll
it'll
get
be
to that
answered.
later when we get to the ESSER. There's a separate slide on ESSER grant funds. So we'll answer it then. All right, moving along to operations and maintenance. So we have various departments in the left-hand column. We've got the value of requests. Those requests for the Deputy of Operational Supports and Programs and Crisis and Safety and Human Resources, et cetera. 125,000, 1,988,000, 114,000. Those total 9 million, or no, those total 8,113,048 as noted in the bottom. We've got 22 requested positions, 21 in Crisis and Safety, 1 in Business and Finance. The value of those positions are noted in the fourth column. Those personnel costs are estimated at $1,304,000, and the total requests over on the far right-hand side totaled $9.4 million. Oh, okay. And so there was a change from Budget Workshop 1 in Business and Finance from, I think it was $1 million something to $5.7 million. We're noting increased contingency by $4.5 million due to reduction in, that's not Brian Luosa positions, it's bilingual positions. And we'll note that later in the academic side where that change is coming from.
I thought it was Brian LaWosa position.
Or born loser.
Right.
So going to the next page or next slide, we've got operating expenses for the various departments, and the total of those are $1,089,092. And then we'll flip to the contract slide, and we'll have 4 departments noting $9.6 million in contracts. And then we will shoot to a more of a summary slide of operational supports and programs, where we noted the goals and action steps in an earlier slide of $8.1 million, the operating expenses of $1,089,000, contracts of $9.6 million, personnel requests of $1,304,000, personnel request benefits $156,492, and then we go into the other funds, operations and maintenance, $7.3 million. Transportation Fund, $11.6 million. Capital Projects, $35 million. Debt Service, $4.5 million. And Tort Fund, $2.6 million, for a total of $81,548,000.
Okay, I've got a question in terms of contracts. Are those because they were on the slide before,
Correct.
it was presented like personnel. But
It was
I see
presented on
here-
a separate contract slide.
Yeah, contracts for who? Outside contracts,
Transportation and
vendor?
food service had the majority of it at 8.9 million. So that would be the busing and the food service contract.
Okay,
And crisis and safety had 262,000, human resources 64,000, and business and finance 459,000.
and so the personnel request benefits, is that for all of our staff?
No, that's just the new positions.
Okay, show me where,
That was back on the goals and action steps slide, where we had 21 positions for crisis and safety at 1,179,000. One in business and finance for 90, and 35,000 in transportation and food service. The total of those new positions or other pays totaled $1,304,000.
okay,
And that was excluding benefits, but benefits were also noted in that footnote of $156,492, and that's also on this slide here too.
okay, that's for new,
New positions, correct.
positions. Have we gotten totals for all of our staff, all of our district staff, and including benefits and stuff? Where is that in the budget?
That I don't,
It should be on the projected fund balance. It'll be included
Yeah.
in the total expense number. I can forward you our details, but in order to get to that projection, we have to include everything, including salaries and benefits. But the
Right.
information that we're giving you currently is really new requests.
Right, okay, I get that, but we also need to see,
Yeah.
okay, total for all of our staff, all of the benefits, everything
Yeah, we
that,
could give you that detail.
that we are, spending money
Liable
for.
We could give you that detail, but that total number we provided, we just didn't break it out in salary, benefits, and purchase services.
It would be helpful for that to be,
We could get that.
broken out.
We have it, we could get it.
Yeah, 'cause everyone up here, school finance is very complicated.
We could give it to you.
Thank you.
Nick, do you just want to be my buddy?
okay.
Go ahead, Ms. Lewis. So
You wanna go ahead?
Get them back on the line.
Okay, I think we finished this slide, total of 81,548,000, and the footnote said below excluding salaries and benefits. Like Ms. Polk said, that's in the initial expenditures number that we noted earlier, but we didn't note it separately. All right, next would be capital projects. And we have some capital projects here that were approved by the was it Capital Development Board or committee. One is the fire alarm replacement at Brookside High School for $2.1 million. And then we have a number of security entry vestibule renovations, Oakdale, Glenwood, let's see, Hyde Park, John Clark, Little Fort, Greenwood, Abbott, Carmen Buckner, McCall. Those are all noted with their prices, and we've also got a domestic boiler replacement at Brookside High School for $400,000.
Now, the capital projects committee, they the one decided what they gonna do at the schools? Did they ask the principals what they wanted? Because, and let me tell you why I'm asking that. Because a few years back, McCall had wanted a like a bus drive. Like the same thing that they did like over at Whittier School, Whittier, because of the dangerous parking lot situation at McCall. And at that point, they said that it was going to be too much money. Well, here with entry, vestibule and stuff, me personally, I would rather have the drive to make it safe for the students and parents transporting their children to school. And I don't know where that came from. I guess maybe that's the question I'm asking.
Yeah, and I didn't hear too much about that. I didn't hear anything about that.
Yeah, LeBaron should know about that. LeBaron.
Good evening, Board President, Board members, Dr. Cesario, staff, and community. And Ms. Patty is on the Capital Improvement Committee, so she was coming up to assist with that answer. But yes, the Capital Improvement Committee is composed of staff members in operations, business and financial services, principals, as well as board members and parents. And the priorities were set based on the committee recommendations. The security entrances that are currently on the screen is actually something new that's transpired since Uvalde, as well as some other incidents that have happened locally and throughout the country. Originally, those security entrances really didn't have a footprint on the capital improvement plan, but that's why you see them listed, as well as the parking lots that were identified as priority that are on, I believe, the next slide. It was presented at a previous meeting, North Elementary School, and the traffic issues there, and the fact that there's not a dedicated drop-off, which is similar to what you're saying at McCall School, sounds like, Ms. Hannah. But those were the locations identified per the committee. It doesn't mean that there are not other priorities, but those were the highest level of priorities the committee recommended to move forward. So principal input was gauged. Mr. Berry and Ms. Patty both sit on that, as well as principal representatives from each level, elementary, middle, and high school.
So you guys asked Mrs. May if she would rather have this or the turnaround for her school.
So we did ask the input of the principal representatives, not Ms. May specifically, but the principal representatives on the committee, as well as the area superintendents.
Right.
Thank you, Deputy Mo. Go ahead, Ms. Lizzie.
I want to follow rules, so if you want me to hold it, I can hold it.
When we started, after this slide, we'll go back.
Okay. Just a quick picture. So I understand the need for the vegetables, especially considering the violence we're seeing in schools. I'm just curious in terms of the timing of everything. So are all of these items accomplishable within the next school year? Because I see that priority level wise, the roof, which had a big to do, I understand it's needed. It needs to be done, but it's also a priority level 4. So when would we anticipate all of these to be completed by?
Yeah. So the reference and the priority number is a color coding for the financial team's record keeping. The Capital Improvement Committee does use a scaled metric similar to this, though, to prioritize. And I just want to clarify 2 items. So the Brookside roof is not a summer 2023 project. Okay. It's identified here as part of the reservation of funds, but it's going to be a spring and summer 2024 project.
Okay.
So it's not going to be completed this summer. All of the other projects, with the exception of a portion of the Hyde Park security entrance, are scheduled to be completed this summer. So we will have substantial completion prior to August 14th when students arrive, and we may have some punch list items, some miscellaneous things to close out those contracts after school starts. But in order for us to be able to occupy those schools, we'll have substantial completion. That is our timeline.
Okay, perfect. So then this is maybe not a question for you as Ms. Polk, maybe because I hear you in the background. It sounds like I'm misunderstanding the pre-priority ranking. So if you could just give me some education on that, that would be helpful.
Yes. Because the listing is mixed in terms of how we're funding it and what fund is coming out of, Mr. Luosa is going to have a slide here that's going to summarize it.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're noting the approximate costs of these projects on this first page. The Brookside fire alarm estimated at $2.1 million. Oakdale, Glenwood, high school boiler replacement, $350,000, $350,000, $400,000 respectively. Hyde Park, $1,526,000. Clark, $260,000, Little Fort, $403,000, Greenwood, $400,000, Abbott, $290,000, Carmen Buckner, $700,000, and McCall, $260,000. Total of $4.9 million. The next slide, we'll note some parking lot replacements for North School, Washington, Hyde Park, Benny, Abbott, more of a retaining wall it looks like, Cook, and Glenwood. Total of those projects, 1.5, almost 1.6 million. AOEC, a tuck pointing and fire escape project, $827,000. Air conditioning, the information technology closets, $375,000. The high school roof estimated at $10.7 million. And the former bank building at 214 West Washington Street, $13 million. So on the next slide, basically it'll note what funds we're taking these projects out of. So number one, any project coded with number one, which would be the Brookside fire alarm, and the AOEC tuck point and fire escapes are going to be charged to Fund 90, life safety. The projects marked with a 2 are going to be charged to Fund 60. The parking lots are totaling $1.5 million. The high school roof, 10.7, bank building, 13 million, and we've got 800,000 for contingency. The total of all those projected allocations, including the contingencies, $35 million.
Pardon me interrupting, and I just wanted to remind the board that we have brought these projects forward for approval. We are showing this in the budget reserve for next year. But all of the projects, with the exception of the Brookside roof, the reservation has been approved. The contract for that particular project has not been, but the other ones have been. In the middle column there, where it shows in small print the $35 million, again, just wanted to reiterate, we want to show that because it has been reserved. But we're not going to bring the projects back with the exception of the high school roof. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the next slide, operational supports and programs. This will give you a summary cost in the operational arena. Ed Fund, $20,348,000. O&M, $7,361,000. Debt service, $4,005,000. Transportation, $11 million. Capital projects, $35 million. That Fund 80 that says debt, that's actually tort fund, and that's $2.6 million. and life safety. So total cost, $81.5 million, excluding salaries and benefits. Now we will go to academic supports and programs under Dr. Cesario. And we'll go to the goals and action steps slide, please. And we have various departments noted on the left, the value of the requests. We've got, on this first page, 3 positions, the value of those positions, and other pays, and then the grand total. So career to college, that would be like Yvonne Fulton's area, assessment and data, academic support programs, Welcome Center, career to education, also known as CTE, equity and accountability, bilingual and multicultural. This is, you see an arrow at this one, this is where we made the adjustment and took $4,558,000 out of this and put it in the operational budget under business and finance that we saw earlier. So we've changed, updated the number of positions for bilingual and multicultural to 2, and curriculum writing in that arena for 1. And like I said, the total requests are noted on the far right-hand side, including the value of the new positions. And if we go to the next page or the next slide, we have more academic areas. Teaching and learning, information technology, diverse learners, area superintendents, outreach, JROTC, post-secondary, K-12 athletics, post-secondary, PE, health, driver's ed, and the deputy. The grand total of these 2 slides, the request itself, $31,937,000. The personnel request, $3.6 million. Grand total, $35,568,000.
Now I have a question
Yes.
for Miss Patty. The $430,000 for your request, what does that encompass?
Bigger podium. Good evening, Board President, members of the board, community colleagues. Mr. Berry and myself both have submitted this budget, so I'm speaking on behalf of both Mr. Berry and myself. We have 3 primary areas that we have requested allocations. One is to continue our work, which was a board approved back in, I believe in March, to continue our coaching log licenses, which is through Schoolmint. It was $43,000 that had been board approved for renewal for the upcoming school year. We did present on that, and that was...
Say again? I didn't hear you.
I'm sorry, I can repeat it. The coaching log that we use for all schools to report feedback and have dialogue with teachers and principals and assistant principals for coaching conversations. That was a presentation and a renewal that we presented on, I think it was in March or April, and it was about $43,000 or $48,000. I don't have the number on top of my head, but it was about $43,000 to $48,000, which was board approved in March, I want to say, and will be renewed come July 1 when we get funding. The other things that we have are for assistant principals and principals to have differentiated professional development opportunities. So through the State Board of Education, there's opportunities for principals to have called micro-credentials, where they can go to something specifically to that they want to learn more about or to be improve their practices on, and that's $180 per session. And so it would give an opportunity for us to differentiate what principals and assistant principals would like to dig more deeply into. It's $180 per micro-credential, and we budgeted for up to $18,000 for assistant principals and principals to have up to 2 opportunities for them to earn micro-credentials that relate to their areas of growth and areas of strength. We also have books and resources for our principal meetings. We presented at the last student achievement meeting on our framework for school leadership meetings for the upcoming school year, and there will be some associated books and resources for that. We budgeted $10,000 for that. We have been doing our Future and Aspiring Leaders cohorts. This will be our 4th year of doing the Future and Aspiring Leaders cohorts through Grand Canyon University, where teachers and staff throughout the district who are interested in becoming kind of grow our own leaders have opportunities to have tuition reimbursement and tuition paid for through our department to obtain their licensure for becoming an administrator. And so we budgeted $150,000 for Grand Canyon University for tuition for teachers or other staff members to become future leaders.
And to get PhDs and all that stuff?
They would receive a master's degree in educational leadership. Most teachers who apply for the program currently have a bachelor's or maybe a master's in another endorsed area. And then this would be a master's degree in leadership through Grand Canyon. We also have our principal leadership team. We have 6 principal leadership team members. We have 3 elementary representatives, a middle school 4 elementary, 1 middle school, and 1 high school representative. They do receive a stipend for their additional duties related to their principal leadership team work outside of their regular school expectations. We also provide mentor opportunities for new assistant principals and new principals. And so because of the added work and time spent for the person being the mentor for the new employee, new administrator, we do provide a small stipend for principals or APs who are mentoring others.
So thank you, Ms. Patty. Are we able to, I guess, Ms. Polk, detail, that's all it sounds like Ms. Hannah is looking for, is the detailed breakdown for the value of request. And so thank you for sharing, Ms. Patty, the detailed analysis of the request.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The link is provided on one of the slides where it had the pyramid with the local, the federal, and state. That link is the detail.
And it's going to show all of the value,
Everything.
the value requests? Okay, with a break?
Yes.
Okay. Is it working?
You'd have to, it's the copy and paste that we talked about last time.
So you copy that link and paste it into your search bar, and it brings up the file Ms. Hannah.
Y'all know I'm not technological.
I'll help you out, no worries.
Go ahead, Mr. Wilson.
So the total of the goals and action steps again is $35,568,000 for academic supports and programs. Going on to the next slide is operating expenses for the academic arena. And we're noting the various departments there and the various value of the requests. This page totals $1,226,000. Then we have a separate slide for contracts, noting the departments again, and a grand total of $21,387,153 in contracts for academic arena. Any questions there? If not, we will proceed to site-based budgeting, and I'll turn it back over to Mr. Lattimore.
Thank you, Mr. Loza. Ms. Polk mentioned this previously as a reminder. Your agenda goes A through H. H is in hotel. We are seeking tonight a head nod from the board in terms of the positions that I'm going to be talking about. The first one is Area 1. You can see the positions that are being requested under SBB, or the ASAP portion of the budget. Carmen Buckner's asked for 7, Lyon 2, North 1, Oakdale 3, Whittier 1, and Brookside 1. You can see the appropriated costs that would be needed to support those positions by school for a total amount of 15 positions on that slide at $522,000.
But without.
Without that's salary.
Salaries and benefits.
Without benefits, correct.
I don't know how you ask.
Next chart, please. Area 2, we have Glenn Flora Smith, 1 and 4 respectively. Again, you can see the appropriated money for those particular positions. 5 positions total on that slide for a total of $300,000, again, without benefits. Next slide, please. ASAP did some pencil sharpening. They relooked at some buildings and specific needs. They've given us some new positions, 2 at Clark, 1 at McCall, and 1 at the high school. And you can see the amount there, and I'll give you a summary so as not to confuse you here in a second. That's new. That's $225,000, not counting fringe benefits. Next slide, please. Here you can see Area 1 and Area 2. Area 1, the initial request was 29 FTE. Area 2, 7 for a total of 36 or $1.4 million, almost 1.5. ASAP has made some request changes, and you can see the change there under request 1 and request 2, and the total now is $225,000 and 20 for 4 positions and 20 positions of $822,000. Let me bring your attention to the bottom of the slide there. The difference is $439,000. Originally it was $664,000, and those dollars, and again, excludes benefits, which we compute to be about $252,000. That money will be moved into contingency. So ASAP took a relook at their needs. Let's talk about the schools for a second. Next slide. You can see the individual schools, the value of their request, any positions they've requested. You see the appropriate dollar amount for those, and then the cumulative amount on the far right side where it says total requested. Carmen, Jack Benny, Hyde Park, Juarez, down to Lewis. You can see the specific amounts, and I'll give you a summary here at the end. Give you a second to review that. Okay, next slide, please. Continuing on, we start off with Clearview, Glenwood, Little Fort, all the way down to the high schools. Again, you can see the total request by the school, by the principals, approved, vetted by ASAP, any new positions, the amount for those new positions, and then the cumulative amount for that respective building. Now, we took those numbers and applied them in the appropriate funds. Fund 10, as a reminder, is the education fund. They come up to $23.3 million, and $2 million in Fund 20, and I believe that was for AEOC for work being done on that building, be a maintenance fund. Give you a second to review that. Okay, moving on to the next slide. The cumulative amount for ASAP support and programs, $86.6 million. Again, that excludes salaries and benefits. At this point, I will yield the floor to Ms. Polk. We're going to talk about COVID because we know you had some questions on that and give you an update. Ms. Polk.
Just kind of want to make a brief comment about the benefits. The reason why we didn't put the benefits on each of the lines because the salaries are estimates, and we typically use about 16.5 to 18% to project what the fringe benefits are going to be. When we're going through the budget, we know that the positions that currently exist, we know the cost of that because it's actually in our financials. And so what we're trying to capture here is to present to the board what the new requests are and how that's going to impact the budget for next year. When we present the estimated expenditures, we absolutely include what the benefits are for the existing positions as well as for new positions. In the presentation tonight, we have position control included, so you would know what the number of existing positions are. And so we will provide the details, but we try to keep it, high level and not give you all of that information, but we definitely do not exclude it when we're projecting the numbers. We have to include it. I still see Ms. Hannah's face, so.
Look, keep it.
Okay, keep it moving.
Yeah.
All right, so we want to go over ESSER because ESSER, we've had a lot of questions as it is related to ESSER, so we wanted to provide information to you all on the status of what the funds are right now. So you'll notice on this particular slide, and I'm sorry that it's sort of small, but you'll see that we've had the food service grant, which is the first one. That grant ended in 2020, I believe. And so we had $25,000 and we spent $25,000. We got that, we spent it, okay? Then we had the Gear 2. That one is projected to end on 6/30 of the current year. We had an allocation of 27.7 and we spent 27.2. Is that 27.2? Okay, I'm wearing my glasses and still can't see the numbers. Okay, so 27.2 and we spent 27.2 and we were paid 27.2. So as you go down this chart, we tried to provide to you those grants, particularly those that are still active grants, the begin date and the end date. So you can see when we have to spend those monies, if there are any monies remaining. The total allocation column obviously is what that organization, whichever organization awarded us those grants, that's what we were granted. And then the expenditure report and FRIZ are those reports in which we've submitted to the organization that provided us those grants. That's what we've expended. That means that's what we've paid, not necessarily what requisitions are in the system right now and we haven't paid it, but that's actual payments, okay? And then the paid column is what we've received. Maybe I should have worded that a little different than paid, but that's how much we've received in the district from the awarder.
So reimbursement?
Those are reimbursements, yes.
Okay, so what was I know the gentleman asked what was the total of ESSER funds?
Yes, this slide right here, I didn't put a total at the bottom of it. And I hate guessing. So I probably shouldn't do that. But I will give you an estimate. I think that in the district we've gotten approximately, if we had 50 million, then we had 20 million, about 80 to 85 million across all of them. But the column that I really wanted to, two columns, the end date and the amount that has been expended. That's the end date, the total allocation, and amount has been expended is really the important columns. And then obviously the far right, the balance to be paid, or the balance that we have left. We need to look at that.
Where's that at?
Balance to be paid.
This last one. So, sorry, just for clarification purposes, when
Yeah.
people are looking at your green columns, right? To
Green.
get to the balance to be paid, which is the final column that you want us to look at.
Yes.
To get that result, are you taking total allocations minus the amount paid or the expenditure?
The total allocation minus the expenditure gives you the balance.
Okay, so it's the first two. So you take the first column, subtract the second column,
Yes.
and you result in the balance to be paid.
Yes.
So can you explain why we don't show an amount for the third line, which is the elementary and secondary relief digital formula?
It ended in 22.
Okay,
So.
that's
Yes.
the end date that we want to reference.
Yes, that's why I said that column is very important.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
May I?
Yeah.
Okay. The CARES ARP program, what is that?
Repeat the question, please.
The CARES ARP program, what is that?
$49.98 at the bottom, EB.
Oh, that came from, where?
Fifth from the bottom.
351. Oh, that's a new grant.
What is
That's
it?
That's the new grant that we just got, right? Yes. Yeah. 351, 927. Yes, that's yours, okay, yeah.
What is it?
Dr. B, what is that grant for?
It's COVID relief.
Yeah.
Well, it's very general.
It's all COVID relief. We would have to get back to the board for the specifics on that grant, what we're permitted to do, but that's yours, IDEA, yeah.
Yeah, because also the second part of that gentleman's question was the benefits to the students.
Okay, we have
education and mental health.
Yes, we have a slide here that's for the majority of the money, the $50 million, that is broken down on how we've allocated it. What we've done with the ESSER money over the past couple of years that we've had that, we've spent the majority of that money on recovery, summer initiatives, because we were forced to do that, really. And then the board, that was one of your points, you said put very little in capital, and if you remember, you capped us at the $8 million. And because, yeah, that was when we were trying to push the majority of this money into capital, and we were over at the auditorium, the Trapp Auditorium. So we were limited at the $8 million, and we had the majority of the 50 for academics, right? And so just recently we came to the board because of the
Main building?
no,
Oh.
because of the roof at the high school. We increased $10 million in here to bring it up to that $18 million, which is in another slide in ESSER. Could I keep going and then you'll see it? Okay. Okay. All right. Next slide, please. So this is ESSER 3. That's the majority of the money that we all talk about all the time. This money, even though is categorical aid, meaning we could only spend it for certain things, it's a little bit more flexible than some of the other COVID money that we have, right? And so here is, and if I could turn around because I probably can see better. So when we look here, we could see that 37% of the allocation is going towards academics and 63% is going towards capital improvement. And so that's a tricky, but it's a tricky question, because you said how much is going towards students, right? But if you're enhancing the facilities, you're also enhancing the culture for the students. And so and then another thing that I want to point out, and this is something that I've told the board each time that we've gotten up here. You have 6 in this hand and 6 in this hand, right? So you have a time limit on how you're going to spend the ESSER money, but you really don't have a time limit on when you're going to spend your local resources. So if we say something is a priority and it's eligible to be put into the ESSER money, which one do you want to spend first? you want to spend your ESSER money first because it has time constraints, and it reserves the money on the local side so that you can fund other things, other initiatives that you desire to do. And so it's not saying that those other initiatives are not important, and it's not saying that they should not go into the ESSER, but we want to ensure that we spend the ESSER money first. We want to make sure that we spend it. And so what we've been doing is much of the expenditures that the schools submit, if we were to give you the details of that grant, you'll see that much of those requests, they're in the ESSER grant. And very little that's not in the schools is in that grant. And we do that intentionally so that we could spend it first. And we can concentrate on the things that are directly impacting the students. And that's why I said that answering that question and looking at that slide might be a little misleading, because it looks like it's more capital in there than it is for overall academics, but it's in the schools. It's in the schools.
I see if you
Go ahead, Mr. Vukovic.
Yes, you said learning loss on a couple of different things up there. And it's been talked about in this room many times. Thank you. About the possibility of reaching out to retired teachers to bring them back in. And as recently as the last board meeting, that was mentioned by a couple of board members. Is there money in this budget allocated for that type of a program?
Sure. Thank you. So we did budget for, we did put that in our initial budget. We had discussion about it to encumber those funds without having those positions there. So we decided in a subsequent meeting where I was meeting with finance, with Deputy Superintendent Moten, to talk about how we could look at this quarterly. So if we needed to make adjustments moving forward, we could. So originally, you saw that Mr. Luosa spoke about a major adjustment to some of the positions that we housed under bilingual. There were about 100 positions there, right? So we discussed it, and we thought what would be best to manage this would be to create a profile or a job description to work with HR, and then to move forward and look at what we were bringing in or how we could recruit folks moving forward and adjust this quarterly. So we weren't encumbering funds that could be allocated elsewhere. The other piece to this too that I think is misleading, or could be misleading, I should say, is like with Varsity Tutors and with Hey Tutor, those budgets were much larger initially, even with the monies that we allocated for our teachers that were tutoring. In our first year, I believe we budgeted close to $10 million. We didn't spend that much because we had fewer people who were fewer teachers that were able to allocate that time after school or before school to tutor. So we had a larger budget, but we didn't utilize it. Same with Varsity Tutors. When we started, we didn't use all of those hours, so the budget that we had allocated, we didn't spend all those funds. So I believe that, if I'm mistaken, please correct me, but that also contributes to this what appears to be a smaller number. To your second part of the question, can we allocate? That's something that we're talking about, is allocating those positions so that we could bring back part-time.
We're talking about it, but we've had learning loss. These funds are used for learning loss. The purpose of it, you can bring people in that are retired and they're not subject to contracts. The money runs out, they're done. But you keep talking about it and you wait. Now, I know school just got out, but 2 months it's back in. Now's the planning time that a budget should be set up for that, a program should be set up, and it should be ready. So on the first day, you can have some able-bodied people there that can identify the problems and work with these kids and maybe you might have some positive results. But otherwise, we're going to wait, and then in October, November, we're going to say, hey, what's going on with that? Well, you know, we were working on it, and the person they've left the district, and we lose another year.
Right.
So,
Agreed. Agreed. I think it's a wonderful idea. I think the team thinks it's a wonderful idea, and that is something that we've been working on. We were looking at bringing in and addressing the learning loss, and that's why we recruited with Varsity Tutors, and we researched both of those entities, those organizations. We were not able to hire as many as we were hoping to hire. And again, this is tutoring it's the best strategy, especially high dosage, small group tutoring is the best way to, total agreement with what you're saying, Mr. Vukovic.
The next slide really provides a little bit more information relative to learning loss and also capital improvement. You'll see here that to date, we've expended $24.5 million. And of that amount, 15.5, and I'm rounding, okay, was expended for what we're talking about right now, learning loss. And that's out of areas of socio-emotional, physical health, and special needs. According to the grant application, these are areas that could fall under learning loss. And so expenses related to those particular areas are where we've targeted the funds. Also, for capital improvements to date, we've spent $8.9 million, and it has to be like for indoor air quality or what impacts that, and to also optimize in-person learning opportunities. Next slide, please. You've seen this before, because we wanted to provide to you some areas, more general areas in which we've invested the monies. And you'll note here, retention initiative, that $2 million that was from the board. Thank you very much for those who received it. Also, instructional materials, you'll see $5 million, and then it goes down to Johnson Controls, HVAC, which is also related to air quality, $2.1 million. And you'll see the amounts that's in this matrix. Any questions relative to the area of expenditures that's in ESSER 3?
She said questions. So I was looking at those deadlines that you told us to look at. Today, if I'm not mistaken, is June 6th. Some of these expire June 30th. So can we have an update on where we are with those specific funds, and if we're on track to keep the money within our district, or if we're going to be sending it back like we did for a portion of the 6/30/2022 that we used as an example to highlight how to read your chart?
Yes. Yes. We're monitoring that, and we're working very closely with the grant managers to ensure that we don't send any money back. You'll note that the largest number is that $26 million, which is ESSER 3. You'll also note that the end date for that, and I'm not looking at the chart, but I believe it is June 30th of 2023. But the grant itself does not end June 30th of 2023. It actually ends September of 2024. But what the state has started doing is to close out those grants for certain years, fiscal years, and then have us reapply. And the balance of those grants would be in the following grant. I think an example of that would be ESSER 2. You'll see that there's 2 lines of ESSER 2. There was a balance of $5 million at the end of the first ESSER 2, and you'll see that the grant for the second one was $5 million. So that's what they're doing a lot with these COVID monies. And so we've already gotten a notice for ESSER 3 because we would have been jumping up and down if we would have lost $26 million. So our intent is to submit that application as soon as possible. We're in the grant process right now where we're going to try and identify some of the expenditures that you all have, that comprehensive list that you have. We're going to identify some of those expenditures and push it into the ESSER 3, which is what we've done the past few years, so that we maximize that.
Oh.
Well, I was just gonna ask, that I'm glad you said that, because I know I've been listening at legislative and stuff, and I was trying to hear that they were, instead of having districts return those funds, that they were working up something where the districts would be able to continue to use those monies.
That would be awesome.
Right.
If beyond September.
Beyond September 2024. So my ears are open.
Yeah.
And I'm, you know me, I'm
Yeah.
to the legislature.
So that's good, but we're trying not to wait until, and just in case that legislation doesn't pass, we're trying to funnel everything that we know that we're going to do in the ESSER so that we can get those monies expended.
I have one more question as a follow-up, just in case I get asked, I want to have an answer for it. So there's the ESSER 2 from 4/12/2020 to 6/30/2022. It looks like we gave back $6 million. Do we have context around that? Because it has listed 19 and we spent 13.
Yes, and then there should be another line for the balance of that. Would you look for that? It's there, trust me.
Okay, so we did not, so the community knows, we did not lose the $6
We did
million.
not.
It's on a different line item
That is
that
correct.
someone will help us out when it's identified.
That is correct.
Perfect.
Yes.
One line for 13 million that's paid, and another line right above it for 5.9 million. Those are both ESSER 2s.
Okay, so it's the 4998 E2s. Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Just a
Yes,
quick
sir.
question on, I'm looking under social counseling, student counseling, social emotional. I see Asian social services and Panorama, but where does BAM come in? Where are we?
Those are just examples. Sure.
Go ahead, what?
No, those are just a couple of examples.
I know, but where in this
are they
chart
on the
does
thing?
BAM fit in? Because didn't we
Right.
use ESSER money to pay BAM and WOW?
Yes, we use ESSER 3 to pay for BAM and WOW. I can answer that question right now, the category, but we could certainly provide the information to Dr. Cesario or the superintendent so that they can distribute that information. We know exactly where it is, but I can't call it off the top of my head. But if I had to guess, it would be in learning loss because it's counseling.
Okay.
Because when the application is submitted, we actually have to put it in categories, right? Those monies that are have been identified for learning loss or summer programs, we have to show that we're spending money in those specific categories. And then the larger amount, I thought it was like 34 million. I'm talking off the top because I look at all these numbers all the time, but I think it's like 34 million that we could spend on various areas. It's not specifically for something. Then that's where we kind of showed here how we're spending those monies. But those other areas, we have to spend for those areas. I think it's like $1,050,000 for 2 different areas, and then that $2 million, I think it is.
Thank you.
So where we didn't have any, and I'm just looking, we didn't have any extra need for our diverse learners. There was nothing, I don't see, unless I'm overlooking that.
In what particular area?
We didn't put any ESSER money into diverse learners?
Where would it
It's intertwined in all of it. It's in there because it's for the total student population. It may not be identified just for, DL students. But we also have to remember that for state aid, there are certain buckets. We have to spend a certain amount on Title I. We have to spend a certain amount on DL. We have to spend a certain amount on EL. And then there's that general bucket. And so all three of those buckets still feed off of the one bucket, but we have to spend for those other three buckets. And it's the same thing here. I mean, it's a bucket of money. Everybody's going to benefit from it. You know, they benefit from the capital improvements. They benefit from the tutoring, and Ms. Hannah is shaking her head no.
Right, because they're, DL
Yeah.
is a major aspect in the district.
Mhm.
And you say that you don't, there's like, I see bilingual,
Mhm.
okay, but I don't see diverse learners. And just like we don't see BAM. And so, I'm looking at ARP ESSER 3 investment.
Mhm.
So, just looking at this, okay, what, they didn't get any investment in the ESSER money? You know. Mm-hmm.
Yes, they did, because it's over. It's, you could come up, but it's overall contributions towards the student body, and we could provide the details for what.
Because wouldn't that, okay, like there's an end of the year DL report that needs to be sent to the government, right? And will that fund, will that money be included in that report that has to be sent annually, sent from DL?
Well, we did have money in there for various things like Orton Gillingham Wish and some other things. I don't have it all memorized right now. As far as reports, I believe, and Brian can correct me, all those expenditures get sent to the state. They're listed in FRIS, and it's all reported. I'm not sure what you mean.
For historically, there's a special ed report that has to be signed off on and sent to the
Maintenance of effort?
government.
Yeah, we passed that again. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And so how that's calculated is that we have this money that's specifically dedicated for special ed. And then we also have the bucket of money that's for everybody. And then we prorate it across the students that are special ed.
Right.
And that's how we get to the total expenditures for special ed, right?
Right.
So that's why I said it might not be labeled special ed, but if the money is going towards the entire student body, the special ed students are benefiting from it. But then there's also buckets of money that's specifically for special ed, and that is the same case for EL.
And that's the reason why I'm asking that, Ms. Pope and Dr. Bublitz, is because I know that special ed gets reimbursed certain percentages for things such as a special education paraprofessional.
You're right. Yes.
They get, you know, reimbursed
You're
and
right.
stuff. And so, you know, that's what I'm talking about.
You're right. Yeah. Yeah. Not enough, but we do get
No,
reimbursed.
I know. I was going to ask because I remember it used to be
Special ed personnel, special ed students.
60%,
you
know, and stuff like that. Yeah.
You remember the number? It is 60%.
I remember. Look, I remember everything.
Yeah, it is. It was at the time, but yeah, we do get reimbursed, and we traditionally get close to 100% reimbursement for special ed transportation.
Yes.
So again, it's not. clearly marked in ESSER funds, but it's one overall budget. So what I always like to stress for the community and to the board is when Ms. Polk, and one of the reasons she wanted to put a recommendation for finance was to put capital improvements, is because those are guaranteed, right? They say this project we're going to pay for it is eligible under ESSER, whereas the other pieces were a little bit more gray, and you got to try and justify the reason and the rationale, right?
Absolutely.
And when we put those expenses in there, which the district was going to pay anyway, it leaves that other money is still there. So even,
Yes.
for example, if we didn't say, well, we're putting these ESSER funds related to special needs, as there was other money that was available that the DL department can draw from that we haven't allocated, that is still there, that is still accessible to use. Am I explaining that correctly?
You explained it correctly.
Thank you.
Yes.
So again, I do think it's important when we talk about the ESSER funds, this is just a portion. Obviously, it's a large portion, but it is not all of the monies that District 60 expands. There are other budgets and funds and grants and all other types of things that we're doing, but this is one of them. So I do
Yes.
appreciate the explanation and the question, Ms. Hannah.
And one of the other things I wanted to add, and I'm real quick with this, is that we want to be strategic about what we're putting into these federal monies, because, I mean, we just came off an audit, right? And we didn't have any citations. We may have had some small ones, and that was because of how we were accounting, and I was so okay with that. Because, and let me tell you what that was. No dollar infraction, but the infraction was that we put all of the early childhood money under the central office location, and they said we needed to have it at the school location, but it was better managed by us at the local level. So we kind of said, okay, there's no dollars. You wrote us a good letter. Everybody, you know, got kudos with it. So we took that one, and Mr. Luosa had to go into the ledger and to move the expenditures in the correct location. And that was the only citation. But when you're talking about $20 million and, you know, no major citation, that's really good, and it goes to the work of the people in the business office. But also, we're looking forward when you have additional millions. I just told you we have upwards of 80 million, right? The federal government is coming in here. I mean, when we had our money, we had a group of 5 from the Department of Education that came into our district. So we know they're coming. So our books have to be right. The expenditures that we put in there have to be right. And so that's why if it sounds like, you know, we're like pushing, we're only putting this in there, we're doing this, we're doing that, and we put, because we know the federal government is coming. And we want to make sure that our books are proper and in order. And I could say that even when the 5 from the Department of Education came in here, we had, what, 0 infractions.
The finance department has never been the issue.
But I'm just talking about
what we so this is yeah, we're talking budget.
I'm just talking about, we want to make sure, and that's why we're taking, you know, the approach, we're taking the approach that we are, and moving certain expenditures in the ESSER money. That's why we're doing it, because we could support it, we could pass an audit, and we don't think we'll have a problem with it.
And we don't have to give anything back.
And we don't have to give anything back.
So that's what's invisible.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate that explanation. If we do want to move on to the next.
Well, it's just 2 slides in the question.
Any other?
Oh, wait. Oh, you're not going over the
we're
last
done?
slide?
Oh, yeah, yes. I'm sorry.
My bad.
I'm sorry. I was trying to run.
I got questions for you.
You're talking about the position control. Oh, yeah. That one, we really, really are excited about that, but I'll go quick because I know food service wants to get up here. And Mr. Luosa and Mr. Anderson went over when we transitioned from rollover budget to zero-based budgeting. We called it zero-based budgeting because it was a total change. You remember that. It was a total change in practice, right? And that was maybe 9 years ago. And so we still didn't have a strategic plan, and so we wanted to move the district to thinking strategically, right? And so we labeled the same process strategic budget planning. And so the emphasis that we wanted to do at that time is to focus on solvency, because you remember we didn't have any money. We didn't have any money, right?
You just let that sit there.
Yeah, I have to let you hear that. We didn't have any money. We were taking out loans to make payroll.
Absolutely.
Right? And so across all of the funds, this district had $40 million across all funds, right? And so solvency is extremely important to us, and we watch it. And we remember, I often say, not only are we dealing with budgets, that's only one aspect, but we're dealing with the cash level. Because if you don't have cash, you can't pay your bills, no matter what you say the budget is. If you don't have cash, you can't pay your bills. So right now, we don't have to worry about, well, are we going to have enough money to pay our bills? We don't have that worry right now, right? So, but solvency and compliance, I just spoke a few minutes ago about compliance, transparency. This whole budget workshop concept and the operations meeting and the ASAP meeting came about when Mr. Godin said he wanted to make sure that the public was well informed about what was going on in the district.
Yes.
And so that's when that whole concept started, because when I first came here, we didn't have budget workshops, we didn't have operations meetings, we didn't have ASAP meetings, but because we wanted to make sure that everybody was informed about what was going on, we created those, and that's how the presentations today, the look of them may have changed, right? But not the information. We're still providing the same information budgetarily. Inclusivity, obviously, everybody feeds into this process. That's how the Budget Development Committee was derived, because we wanted to hear the voices of all constituents so that everybody can let us know what they thought was important for the district. And then, of course, the ultimate decision maker after we present the information to the superintendent is the Board of Education. And then equity-based, that's why we moved to what we moved to, because rollover is just rollover. There's no thought in it. There's no prioritization. There's nothing except I spent it last year, I had it last year, I want it this year,
and you
give it to me
overspend,
again.
because if
And
you got money left over, your budget was going to be reduced. And so you ended up with pallets of books that nobody used. So
you said it best. Yes. And then we went to needs focused. Rather than it's mine, I have it, I want it, but it's needs. And then obviously the one thing that we don't have on here is progress monitoring, to make sure that what we're doing makes sense, that has helped a number of individuals and is best for the district. And that's why we do what we do. Any questions?
I've got three. Well, really 2 questions and a plug for you. So, new to the board, if we can explain, just so I have a frame of reference, within the site-based budgeting, there's line items for professional development. So if we are approving this budget, it's assumed that will be used for professional development within that site. How does that relate or correlate to when someone comes up to the podium and says, we'd like to use $50 million, or not 50 million, 50,000, my bad. $50,000, I mean, it feels like it. $50,000 to go to a conference. Are they pulling from that pot or a separate pot?
Yes, because if you look at the details.
You said yes, and I asked which pot.
Yes, I'm going to tell you. If you look at the detail sheet that we gave you, all of the professional development is there.
Right.
Right? But if there's a change or a shift, because the budget is a living document, there are changes often, right? But anytime, this is one thing that the board has to be aware of, as we are, if any time that you go above the budget that was approved by the board or adopted by the board, we have to go back through the budget process. We cannot exceed the adopted budget amount. We cannot legally do it, right? Another thing is if we're going above 10% on a particular line, and it's talking about function, right? Talking about if you're talking academics, not necessarily if it's in Dr. Cesario's office or if it's in Brian Luosa's office. No. If it's under academics, we cannot exceed that by 10%, or we have to go back through the budget process, right? So we're constantly monitoring that as well to make sure that we don't have to do a budget amendment. But if we're doing internal transfers between lines, that sort of thing, and when you're talking about 10%, when you're talking millions on the line, you know, it would have to be large for us to be forced to do an amendment. But those shifts or changes are often identified when we're doing progress monitoring with the schools. They're briefing Amanda Patty and also Mr. Berry and also Dr. Nault on what they're doing, and they're shifting their school improvement plans where their expenditures are matching their budgets.
So are the in saying all of that, right? Mm-hmm. And I know that that the area superintendents are being what you said, but I'm used to you all communicating the information directly to the principals so that there is not a fracturing of the information.
Well, I believe that the principals, matter of fact, aren't they meeting tomorrow? I think they're meeting tomorrow. The principals actually meet with the area superintendents and Dr. Nault and go over their budgets and their school improvement plans.
So y'all gonna be there too?
We're often there, yes.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead, Dr.
If you don't mind, sorry, just really quick. Additionally, the entire team reviewed the SIP twice, and there were 2 workshops with the area superintendents and the principals. And then we also, when we kick off the budget cycle, which is really at the end of October, we work across divisions. We hold several meetings so that we are all, so the messaging isn't fractured, and so that we can have a timeline so that the principals can see what the ASAP budget is going to look like, and we can also hear and see if there are any redundancies, so we can reduce those redundancies, maximize grant funding and other funding available to support the schools.
So you all do take what the principals say?
We do, and I think it's really important to note that we can't accept everything. I think it's a similar process to what we've done before in some of the workshops where we prioritize what the needs are. And so there are often times where we may have to say, is this something that we're working on now, or is it something we're working on next year, or what can we do to maximize? And oftentimes some of those pieces and some of those conversations, we can find grant funding to support some of these pieces as well.
And
so we don't approve everything, I guess is the point. That it's a conversation about where are the highest needs and where are the highest priorities. But we definitely take the principals. We want to hear from the principals and look at what they're doing, but we also want to make sure that all the departments have vetted through that and provided their feedback as well.
Two, I guess, really brief points. I want to, as a board member, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when you look at the line item, it'll tell if it was budgeted or unbudgeted. So that was the one, is if there's, I may shift and say, well, we were going to go to that conference, but because of dates, et cetera, I'm going to this conference. What the finance department will do is to let us know if this is budgeted, meaning planned for and within that dollar amount, right? Or if it is unplanned and unbudgeted for, and the board would either approve or not approve. That's correct, right?
Yes,
So
that's
that's the one.
correct.
So when they're coming, we have technically already approved the dollars, right? And so unless it's over those dollar
Right.
amounts, it's one of those weird things where we're saying we're reserving the money, but the board may say priorities have changed, right? And we can say no. There may be other things, right? And legally, if the trip is going to cost over a certain amount of money, it has to also come before the board. So although we are approving it in theory, the dollar amount in this process, the details in the board still will vote yay or nay when it comes before us, and that's why you see it come. So in what'll draw your attention is when you see the item, it'll show if it was budgeted or unbudgeted, right?
Right.
I hope the community is learning along with me.
It's a lot.
No, it is, but this also isn't, we're not educating the community on how to read these things, so I'm glad I'm an example of how we can get that information out. The other question I had was, if a school has their site-based budgeted and they don't get to something at the end of the year, or other departments aren't fulfilling their needs, what happens to those funds? It's a two-part question. So what happens to those funds?
Yep. It goes back into the coffer because we're starting over. You have to justify that the need still exists.
But if it's not the fault of the school, so let's say the site did everything they needed to, but it fell through the cracks in another department, it's still up to the school to justify that they still need it, even though they already did and they did everything that they needed to do,
Yes.
instead of granting an extension?
Yes, because we're starting over, and so maybe there's something else that comes up that has a higher priority
At that particular school.
in that particular school across the district. Because each year, the budget becomes zero. If you don't get to do it, if you've started it, obviously, we're going to reserve the money because it's not a new start. But any new starts, even something that was previously approved, unless we do a resolution. So you notice that we did the $35 million resolution because we have to hold that money so that we can't spend it on anything else. And so when we put it in our budget, we're going to reserve it. When we put it in our end of year annual financial statements, we're going to reserve it. The auditor is going to reserve that. So it's going to be a reserved budget. So the unreserved budget will be the beginning balance or the ending balance minus the reserve, and that's the unreserved, and that's all you have to spend for that year. So because the board said that that was a priority, irregardless of what year, obviously it reduces it if we spend it, right? If we spend all of it in 24, then it's going to be zero that's reserved. But let's say of the 35 million, we spend 30, then 5 million is going to be reserved moving forward. And I was very intentional about saying that it would be reserved until the board rescinds it.
Okay, so I understand the financial aspect
Yeah.
of that because you have to restart every year with that budget. My concern is where the equity comes in, where the school has already displayed the need, and through no fault of that location, it didn't get completed, and they have to restart the whole process, vying for not only that need, but something that they had as priority 2 or 3 for the next year. They have to fight for both of those now. So maybe that's just a take back that we can have as a discussion of within the board, but that's just one of my concerns, because if I'm doing everything I need to do and somebody drops the ball, I can't go do their job and pick up that ball for them, right? I can't alleviate all of the other projects that they have so that they can get into mine. But I think that's maybe just a bigger conversation we need to have.
I can give you a good example of one.
Go ahead. No, I want to. Let's hear from Ms.
I can
Polk
give you
for
a good example of one.
Okay.
We have AOEC who has over $2 million worth of capital. So she's done everything she needs to do in order to do her capital. But maybe that's not in the wheelhouse for operations. Maybe they don't have the capacity to do it. So that $2 million doesn't fall off. It's still on the list of priorities or needs within the district. But I think you alluded to it, Board President, where you said it is an unfunded need. It's still there, but it's not it hasn't been ranked as one of the highest priorities in terms of our ability to pay for it. And in this case, we have it in there, so we're able to pay for it, but it's not about our money. It's about our ability to be able to do it.
But if
So are we having these conversations in tandem? I'm sorry, Ms. Hannah. So when our sites are creating these budgets and saying this is what we want to do, they're working with our tech department, they're working with our operations department, and they're agreeing and saying, yes, this is something that we can tackle in this year.
Yes. And then
And
let's
then
say
it
a roof caves in.
Yeah, I get that.
We have a new, and I'm just trying to take you through how it's a living document, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the roof caves in. So now doing that particular thing at AOEC, like the elevator, I think it is not a priority, but the roof is a priority. So we have to shift the money, right, from that elevator to the roof.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, it went, because this is the way that I tried to explain it when we were bringing this concept here, is that we have this long list, we have X amount of dollars, so we draw the line.
Mm-hmm.
Everything above we could fund, everything below we can't. But it's not saying it's not important. It is important. It's just that we either cannot pay for it or we can't physically do it. And so that next year, we know that Mr. Moulton has that list. Yes, yes. Mr. Moulton has that list of the things that's unfunded. And when he goes to the Capital Development Committee, he brings that list of those things that were unfunded. But guess what? The schools or the departments or just operation has a new list. Mm-hmm. So you have to consider those things that were previously on the list that was unfunded, as well as the new things that, that are on the list, and you prioritize it again.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where it's still there, but we have to look at it and vet it and say, is this still a priority for the Board of Education, for the superintendent, for the district? And if it is, then we fund it. If it isn't, it's still on the list, it's just unfunded.
They put it in the parking lot.
Yeah, the park, no.
They put it in the parking lot, and sometimes things just really, they rust in the parking lot.
Miss Hannah.
So, and I'll give one example, and then I do want to, is the, my kid attends a school in which we have craters in the parking lot.
Yeah, I know.
And one of those is, for that school, it was a priority, right? It was something that they wanted to address, something that I believe they had attempted to address in their SPB. But because of capacity, other priorities, it was always there, but through conversation, it had to hold. Eventually, one of the things that, thank you, Ms. Polk, we did this year is we said, look, if I'm always trying to justify parking lots in comparison to asbestos abatement, in comparison to safety, parking lots, while important, while detrimental, kept falling to the bottom of our list. So we eventually had to go in and create a line item that said this is how much money we're reserving for parking lots. It's because we had to take it out of that reprioritization list. Otherwise, we would be sitting here not talking about the, 7 or 8 schools that we are doing the reparking, but the roof. Roof has been on that list every year. Mm-hmm. But then we go, dang, do we really want to spend $10 million? Not that it's not important, not that the school doesn't understand it's a need. How many other projects can we complete for $10 million? So it still stays on the list, meaning it's one of the things that's there that they asked for that is unfunded. Now, if we get a grant, if we get additional money, if we get windfall, then we don't have to guess about where the money is going, which makes us much more efficient. Is because we're able, if we got 100, we can go right to line item 101 and say this is the next thing that we're funding, because we've already taken the issue of prioritizing. So I 100% understand that maybe we would have to see context of when something was not approved, but I know Ms. Hannah talked about McCall, right? All of that is a need, but when you look at it in the context of everything that the board has to do, you go to that principle, and through collaborative discussion, you go, either we're not doing it this year, this is where it's at in the plan, or something shifted, right? COVID.
So it is a dialogue with the principals, so they're not left jilted and frustrated asking for the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. That's what I just want to make sure is that
the communication.
yes, that's secure and locked down.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
I asked Mr. Moulton to come up because he's been doing this for a number of years.
Nobody's happy when their project doesn't get funded.
I know.
Yeah. And then I have one plug and I'll shut up. Maybe. Step up to the mic.
I don't think I've been asked that question directly. How do we do it? Because sometimes I think that we may not be successful in doing it because the priorities and the needs are so great. But as has been mentioned throughout the evening, we do have to prioritize, and the priorities shift year to year. The priorities from 4 years ago when we started the 10-year plan are not all the priorities of today. We also have had intentional conversations either with the Capital Improvement Committee or with our vendors with the ESSER funds that have been made available. We had a list already prepared. What can we do to do some projects in advance and do some projects early, either current or do projects early that come in future years? We discussed several times articles amongst the administrative team about districts similar to Waukegan throughout the country that were really at a standstill when the ESSER funds became available. They said, what are we going to do with this influx of cash? And how is it going to be sustainable? What are our most pressing needs? A lot of those districts turned to infrastructure, but they almost had a year and a half delay because they had not previously identified proactively those needs, and they were in a reactive state, which used to be the state of this district as well. So it's a credit to the whole team. I don't do it in isolation, but that is how we've been able to prioritize in the capital improvement list, which is one of the initiatives for the upcoming year to kind of clean up and make a little more current, was based on 10 key categories, and I don't have them all memorized, but electrical systems, HVAC, windows, playground replacements, 10 key categories we identified as top needs throughout every building in the district.
The track.
And the athletic
Y'all need to put
facilities.
the athletic track in there.
So bring it forward to let them see the cost.
So we talking about spending $10 million on the roof.
And we did this year.
You gotta have
and
a
I did
room.
mention this. I did mention this at a public meeting because of lead times of equipment and increases in labor costs. We have looked out years beyond this year. We talked about the Brookside roof. We've talked about Weisfield. We've talked about some other potential life safety items, or what we may project may be A and B priorities the next time we do our 10-year survey, which will be in about 3 to 4 years. So we're looking several years out at this point to secure the work. I presented at a conference with Ms. Polk last year, and there were districts throughout the country that were ordering materials and getting projects secured for the summer of 2025. So they were doing things 2 years in advance, vendor contracts and ordering equipment. So we're trying to get in that mindset, and that is the reality of the situation. The money is great, but we have supply chain, we have vendors that are getting booked left and right. And that was one of the challenges we saw this year with the Hyde Park security entrance. Availability to contractors and supplies in order to meet our deadline. And that was actually the first project that we bid on our capital improvement list this year.
We'll have a talk.
Yes, Ms. Hannah.
Don't leave that podium. If someone in our community, whether it be district staff, family member of our students, business owner, resident, and they want to be on the capital improvements committee, who would they contact to do so?
So for that committee, they can contact me. We will incorporate them within our committee composition procedures, as we have done. We have had a high level of consistency in that committee over the years. For some reason, a lot of people like being on that committee. I think we had 19 people actively participate, not just be on the committee, but actively participate in the meetings that we had this year. So they can reach out if they're community residents who are experts in the area, whether it's financial, capital planning, construction related. They can reach out and certainly be vetted to be part of the committee, as well as parents who have an interest in those items. We have a lot of parent participation in this group as well.
For the YouTube, can we put Mr. Moten's email in the chat for access?
Yes, lmoten@wps60.org. LMOTEN@WPS60.org. Thank you.
No. My only piece, and I'm planting that seed, and so people get mad at me. It's okay. We have two ways to accomplish tasks, and that is we increase revenue through taxes, right, or we decrease expenses, and so there is to some extent a zero-sum game. As we talk about the level of investment that we want to make in our infrastructure, I want the board to continually be thinking about how do we get there. I don't believe that we are going to cut our way there. We can't, but I am proud of the investments that we've made. Again, we got 100-year-old buildings, so we're going to continue, and I would hope that this board continues to make capital improvements a priority, and that we continue to move forward with projects because we have great needs. And I want to say kudos to everyone too. Is because we have that list, we've been able to advocate for other projects. Is because when we go, or when somebody shows up and says, we go, oh, we want to do bathrooms, we hear it from the students, but in that prioritization list, okay, is it the bathrooms or is it the security vestibules? Is it the bathrooms or is it getting rid of the mobiles? Which, I'm sorry, principals, I want them gone. What we can do is then go and identify other projects or grants specific that address those line items. So there was a grant that we got for bathroom renovations a couple years ago, and we were able to move quickly and quicker than other districts. It's because we weren't guessing. We knew the amount that it would cost. We had it ready to go. We just ran out of money. So I do want to say kudos. So I know we got a couple. Go ahead, Ms. Vukovic.
Lit up?
I think he's on.
Thank you. First of all, I want to compliment Ms. Polk and her department for the presentation, but all the information that's available online. I mean, it's out there, and people can go through it and look at it, and it's interesting. That's for sure. You talk about 100-year-old buildings. The newest building in this district is 30 years old, and that's Juarez Middle School. Everything else in this district has been band-aided and added on to. This building, I think, is 98 years old. You look at North School is addition after addition after addition. So, you're doing all that kind of stuff there. But the one comment I want to make, and I found this a couple of days ago, we're spending tens of thousands and millions of dollars on things, and we're making things look good, so it feels good. We're putting air conditioning in, we're driveways and that kind of stuff there. But if I'm not mistaken, we're allocating $25 per teacher for supplies. I mean, good Lord, this is 2023. 20 years ago, when my wife and I were involved at the Cook PTO, we were raising funds there and supplementing teachers. I think it was $200 a year. I mean, if you want to make it look good and feel good, first of all, for the staff member, you're paying these people a hair over $40,000, and then they have to dig into their own pocket to put supplies in their classroom. That's something that you need to look at and come on, dig a little deeper. If you can send people on conferences and you can do all these other things, give the people on the front line some of the tools they need to do the job.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you for that comment, Mr. Vukovic. All right, we have, we're not going to G, are we? The HR, no, we're good on that. So we're going to A, which is the request for proposal for a food service management company, and this will be the last item.
Quick question. Do we have a head nod to move forward with the positions?
And talk about the rationale. So we are up against other districts and hiring. So if the board is going to approve them, they would like to get them posted and to have retroactive approval, is because every day that we delay is a day that we leave a candidate off.
But we have I've got concerns about that HR position control, because it really shows how each school, many of them are way behind in hiring paras and teachers.
Right.
We've
So
got
so
400
so if we approve or give them the head nod, I think that's what we're asking. It starts that process.
I mean, those are important people in front of our kids.
Yep.
Our paras, our teachers. That's a big concern I have. I mean, we've done better with our counselors and stuff, but when I was just looking through this while we were talking about capital improvements, and I see we've got a heck of a job. Like you said, other districts are competing for these people, but the stress that our teachers face when there are shortages, that's really tough. It's been tough. We've heard that for the last couple years, and I think we've got to make that a priority.
Yes,
if
and
we're gonna-
we're not referring to those that existing positions.
Right.
Are vacancies. We're
Can you put the
referring
mic so we can hear you?
Yes, we're not referring to the existing positions or the vacancies that's on position control, but we're referring to the list of SBB positions, and also the one position for the junior ROTC outreach, and I think one for the high school, but all of them were SBB with the exception of those two positions, and we're asking if we could move forward with hiring them.
Go ahead.
Ms. Hannah's laughing.
Lindsay.
Sorry. So when I was on that side, and now that I'm on this side, my opinion has not changed. Are we posting the intended pay on these job postings?
Nope.
We'll have to come back. We'll have to come back. We'll have to refer that question to HR and then give it to Dr. Cesario, the superintendent, to forward.
Go ahead, Ms. Hannah.
Okay, I can answer your question? No.
No, I mean,
let
we
me
have
tell
not
you-
passed, but
Right,
current.
but I'm talking, right, the past, no.
I can't
And
account for that.
Let me tell you, no, I get it. I'm talking about now. As of day before yesterday, I went in on our Appletrack.com and I looked, and it's like, I looked at, I mean, it was scroll after scroll after scroll after scroll, okay, of positions, right? And I'm like, well, are these new positions or are these just vacant positions? Because it was a lot of vacancies.
Yeah.
And
So we have a lot of vacancies, and we get the vacancy report. So for time, I'm gonna ask that we bring HR back. I mean, you can ask the question, but back to of Ms. Polk, she's not going to have the answer.
No.
Yeah, I can't answer.
Right, you're right.
That's all I'm saying, Ms. Hannah. Not you
Yeah,
can't
but
ask the
no,
question. She's not the
right,
best
and-
person
and
to ask.
And I was answering your question too.
I mean, that's the current ones, which I'm more than happy now that you've brought it up to also apply it to that, because I think transparency is key in that respect. But the line item was for the new SBB position.
Yes.
So I would love for it to apply to all.
Yeah.
You have a head nod from me.
Okay.
Yes, no,
So the
maybe.
head nod is what?
What
What do we do? The head nod is for the. is to
To
accept
start
what's here?
hiring for the SBB position request, so brand new
Right.
positions.
Yep.
Okay, yes, you got a head nod.
Yeah, and I would head nod too, except there's information missing for me.
What do you need?
You in all of the points, the PowerPoints, right? You excluded salaries and benefits. And I was still trying to hear salaries and benefits because, as you know, that I know that salaries and benefits are one of the largest expenditures that we have in the school district. And so I don't want the board to be
The new positions they want.
misunderstanding that what you presented, right, was the actual number of like all of those positions, right? That's what the requested value was, right? But it is excluding the salary and
It's
the
excluding
benefits. Okay,
Yes.
the benefits. But there were other things that said excluding salaries and benefits, like the 81 million.
Yeah. Can we go to that slide?
Yeah, it says excluding benefits.
It says salaries and benefits.
So the new positions is what we're talking about, the ones that, if we can go there.
Oh, yeah.
Go back. I know, Mr. White, you're gonna be going for a little bit, but it's not too far back.
Let me see. Is
So
that-
the benefits are gonna be
yeah.
that 252, 959.
Yeah.
Oh,
So it's
keep-
new requests.
Keep going.
That's the
going.
new.
Keep going,
Yes.
Mr. White.
You see that?
Keep going.
See?
Oh no,
What
I'm
does
sorry.
that say? It
Well,
says,
that's the ASAP funding for the different
but
pieces
that's
not
all of
included.
that.
Oh, SBB. That's where we're going. So it's back, right? Is SBB before capital projects or after capital projects?
It's after.
So other way, Mr. White. Keep going. Keep going.
That,
Keep going. Here. So Ms. Hannah, you see the value of new positions. So for the bilingual and multicultural
I
ed,
get it.
there are 2 new positions. The value of those new positions is 1.66, 367, but that is also estimate because we haven't hired the individuals.
And I'm still looking for it in those positions. What is the what's the benefits? Because benefits cost money.
Yes.
Benefits cost a lot of money.
And the average
Yes.
is 16.5%.
16.5.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
All right.
So
So you have a
anyway,
head nod from
16.5 to
me.
18
So you
range
got a
we're
head nod from me,
Yeah.
head nod from
And
Ray.
that's what I use to
Jeff, you
estimate
got a
the
head nod.
benefits. Because normally when we submit the information, even during the regular board meeting, it's the salary. We're not including the fringe
Right.
benefits. So we did the same thing here to follow the normal practice. But when we're projecting the budget, we are including benefits.
Yeah, because
We
it
know
has-
overall that we're spending approximately 21 to 23 million dollars overall for benefits. So we know that there's a fiscal impact there. But I
Absolutely.
think, how we've done this in the past is that we wanted to show you the estimated salary for those particular positions. Because it's an estimate. We don't know how many years they're going to come in with prior experience or anything like that. So we just put an approximate number there so we can account for the position. And that's why we have the contingencies, because we don't know, right? And then you also know that we're in the bowels of negotiating several contracts. So we put contingencies in the budget for that, because we don't know what that's going to be.
Ms. Linson, did you have another question or did we get? No, yes.
I'm gonna keep my mouth shut. I'm good.
Okay. You sure?
But I do understand what you're saying, and we can provide the details because we have it behind the scenes. We just didn't include it in the presentation. We have to have it, right?
Oh, it was the head nod piece. That's what I was going to
Yeah.
you for, Ms. Lindsay.
Oh, I nodded my head. Yes.
So we're yes. It's
Yeah, and I
you got a
think mine
majority.
is too. I
God,
just
thank you.
had some
Reservation.
All right.
reservations.
You got it.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pope.
And so their food service is covered up.
Hi, Alicia. How you doing? You waiting?
It's been a long time, yeah.
All right, good evening again. We just wanted to provide some information regarding the food service RFP, which was brought forward at a couple of meetings, one in October and one in January. Wanted to give some additional details here as well as provide an opportunity if there are any questions. You'll see noted in the agenda item some critical dates as it relates to the RFP for this process. February 28th to March 8th. We've identified it on the agenda item during the months of February and March. We did do an advertisement for bid for the RFP services for child nutrition, the child nutrition contract. On March 10th, we had a pre-bid meeting, and we had several interested vendors at that meeting, double-digit vendors. They came in, met with the staff, did a walkthrough at some of the school sites so they could see what they're getting into if they submitted and were awarded a bid with our district. On April 14th, those bid proposals were open, and an evaluation process ensued after that. At a previous board meeting, we did express that there are changes in the school code as it relates to food service procurement. Historically, we've done a low bid process, and we do that for a lot of the similar type services, transportation, construction projects, etc. However, with changes in the school code, we had an opportunity to look at a few additional items outside of just low bid price. And with that,
Which were what?
sure, I'll identify those items for you, Ms. Hannah. So cost was obviously a factor. Promotion of health and well-being of students, local food products, hormone and pest practices, animal welfare, contracting with small and minority businesses, women business enterprises, financial conditions, business practices, service capability, past experiences with districts and references, and commodity utilization, and use of USDA foods and food quality. So the evaluators looked at comprehensive proposals from the 4 bids that were received and cross-referenced these items in an evaluation rubric and gave each of those 4 a rating. These 4 individuals were kept confidential as far as them talking with other individuals in order to potentially influence or not influence their rating. But they provided a recommendation based on those 9 areas and the preference areas within those 9 areas. And as referenced in the agenda item, that recommendation based on the scoring was Sodexo at 355.32 points out of a total of 400. So that rating is 400 points total max per evaluator, for 100 points per evaluator, 400 total, and the 355 rating. Now, this is not an OSC meeting. The reason it's an information item this evening is because we also wanted to remind the board that the current food service vendor contract ends June 30th of 2023, which is also the end of summer school. It is extremely critical that we onboard a new vendor with a July 1 start so they can be ready for August 14th. Now, we did reach out to the other 3 vendors who not recommended prior to the meeting today, last week, to let them know and give them a breakdown of the ratings they received from the evaluators. In the event that any of those 3 vendors choose to appeal or request any additional information, we'll certainly provide it with them, but we felt it was absolutely critical to proceed with the recommendation to ensure a vendor was available for us at the start of next school year. This is a little different than what we recently did with transportation, which was a 3-year contract. This is going to be a 1-year contract with the option for 4 one-year renewals, similar to what we've done with K-12 LEO in the past. So 1-year contract, 4 one-year renewals. So we will need to come back to the board on an annual basis if we choose to extend this agreement with the recommended vendor, but it's not going to be a year 1 requesting approval for 5 total years.
I'm so glad to hear that we are going to think about multi-year contracts with the vendors, and I'm not speaking of anything specifically with Sodexo, so don't think that. But I'm glad that we're going to do that. But I also have a question. You talked about the evaluators. Who are the evaluators? Were they professional evaluators?
Yeah, so I'm not going to reference the evaluators by name here, Ms.
Oh, you
Hannah,
don't
but
have
the
to.
evaluators were experts in the area of fiscal management, the area of purchase services. So those evaluators were experts in those areas and lent their expertise to this process for the district. And there were 4 of them.
You said what?
District staff with those experiences.
Yeah, they were district staff members, and there were 4 of them for the 4 proposals.
Oh. Okay.
Just for my knowledge, and maybe other people might find it beneficial, what was the spread? So if 355 was the high, how far below did 234 come? Or just 2?
Sure. So the four totals were 355, and I won't mention the decimal points.
Yeah.
355, 321, 319, and 316.
Okay, okay. So a clear leader, one would say.
Clear leader.
Go ahead, Mr.
Yeah,
Riddle.
can I just ask, so that I understand the reason why we're not going for a multi-year contract? What was the rationale on a just a, you know, that we renew it every year or have the option to renew?
So, go ahead, Ms. Williams. Should be at the bottom.
You're not on.
Yeah, it's got to have a green light on the thing.
So with the ISB contract in the RFP, it states that you have to do 1 year with the options of renewing up to 4 years. So every year you come up and we ask for renewal. We can't do bulk years at a time. And that's their requirement. That's not Waukegan saying that.
What was ISB's rationale for that? Do you have some idea? Why were they, I mean, in the past, we've always had a multi-year contract, and then we've recently started doing some, you know, extensions, but,
No, it's always been 1 year. Every year we come to the board.
Oh,
And
okay.
because the extension, you can only do it for 5 years with one vendor. That's maybe where you're confused at. But every year we have to come up and get it renewed. That 5th year, we have to go out for procurement no matter
Okay.
what.
okay.
And that procurement could result in the same vendor if it's top scoring?
Well, yes.
And I
The
think
new
that
process
it-
this year is different from prior, where we always had to go with the lowest bidder.
And I think
Okay.
I think it has kind of something to do with antitrust, the antitrust concept. You know that there, you know, all that multi-year, it's kicking people out of the potential process. You know, I could be wrong, but that kind of why it's above our head, Mr. Riddle.
Right, right.
Yeah,
My other
so-
question, I guess, would be, you know, some of the public are going to say, how much extra did we have to go to get this vendor? I mean, what was it worth? Certainly, food is a very important item for our students and families. So I guess the evaluators weighed that in. I don't know how much you can tell because you're not allowed to tell what the other bids were, I guess. But was there a big spread? Can you say that, or was there not? Was it still fairly close based on how good the evaluators I mean, is it pretty good
It was
spread
kinda
here?
high, close to what we have right now. It was kind of high, getting to that amount.
So, Mr. Riddle, are you referencing the financial cost of the proposals?
Well, kind of the financial
spread.
cost with the reputation of this company that the evaluators thought this company had some really good things behind them.
Sure.
So that was willing to say, let's go with them. They're not the lowest, but no.
Sure. So the evaluation was based on the quality of what was put in the bid in response to the 9 categories I mentioned, but the pricing is based on the unit price per meal. So that is not a particular item that is qualitative, I would say. It's really a financial formula. So that was weighted a little different than the other items, which were more qualitative based on the feedback we received. If feedback from a particular vendor wasn't substantial or detailed, then it would have been rated different than somebody who actually provided substantial details in any of the preference areas that I mentioned. Now, we are still a CEP district, community eligibility provision, for reimbursable meals. So the cost question and what's reimbursable and what may not be is kind of a tricky one, because we're still seeking reimbursable meals even though the contract and the bid, all 4 of them were different values. So I just want to put that out there, because we're not really, we didn't want it ultimately to come down to price, I guess is the most direct. We didn't want price to be the determining factor, otherwise we wouldn't have asked or looked at any of the other areas, which were much more qualitative. And also, we wanted to be responsive in the process moving forward based on the survey that was put out to students in the middle and high school at the end of last calendar year, where, and part of that is where the qualitative piece comes in, where they talk about the quality of food, not necessarily local food sourcing, but the quality of food, the diversity of food, more ethnic foods, things like that. We're going to try to incorporate with the new vendor, and that was after 4.5 years with the previous vendor. A lot of them noted that, and that was one of our higher survey responses we saw specifically from students for 647, give or take 1 or 2 responses, just for that one item.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Gonzalez, are you, can you hear? Adriana? Is the phone on mute?
I am. Do we trust me?
Ms. Gonzalez.
Have a good night.
Is she on?
It says in call.
I don't know if she had a question or comment.
How do you see that she's on? So she's the 812? Oh, makes sense, yep.
While we wait for Ms. Gonzalez, did anybody else have a question?
I have a comment.
Go ahead, Ms. Anna.
We did the taste testing today, and the food was good. But I also had had a couple comments that I made to Sodexo, and just to let those of you that don't know that Sodexo has been in our school district as our food vendor before. They were very good, and circumstances, you know, back then was like where they weren't there anymore. Anyway, the food tasting was good. I kind of mentioned to Mr. Moulton that that if they want the kids to eat it, it kind of got to be a little bit more flavorful, because you know, and I know about the, you know, the FDA standards and all that stuff like that, but I'm just telling you. And somebody asked a question about waste, and you're gonna get a lot of waste if y'all don't season the food a little bit more. But basically the food was good, and it was quality. The kids are gonna like all of that stuff that we consider kid food, okay, but it was good. And so I'm really excited to get back with Sodexo, because when they were here before, they really had good food, and I'm going to hope that it's going to be the same thing, but better now as the years have evolved.
Right. I'd second that, Ms. Hannah. And also there was students there who were eating it, and I think they looked like they had some smiles on their faces. So I think they enjoyed what we tried.
I want to comment, but if Ms. Gonzalez is ready to go, I don't want to cut in front of her.
Is she ready?
Adriana? Yeah, she says she's talking.
Can't. Is this mic on? It's not even coming out of there, so I don't know why I asked that question.
Yeah, I turned it up. Go ahead, Miss Lindsay.
Otherwise, we can get someone's cell phone up. So I'm going to be extremely transparent. I send my kids to school with lunch because, and I may have been misinformed, but when I got those monthly calendars for what's going to be on the menu, I thought this is not healthy. And I think what we need to just do is reframe what that healthy piece is based on the guidelines that our food service providers have to give to our schools. So when I saw barbecue chicken, I was like, I don't know what we're talking about.
Sorry.
Barbecue has sugar, this, that, and the other thing, right? And so my standards of healthy are different than what the government
Hello?
states is healthy.
Hello?
We can hear you now, but now
I'll let her go.
Ms.
I'll finish
Lindsay-
after.
Oh, you guys can hear me now?
Yes,
we
ma'am.
can.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I was like speaking and then the conversation kept going and then I didn't know what happened. So, I don't know where exactly in the conversation we are because I'm like listening to the meeting through headphones on my computer and then my phone audio is pretty bad, but I know we're talking about Sodexo and a new food vendor. I think, you know, based off of what we've been hearing from our students and, you know, even remembering some of the lunches that I had in high school, I think we need to be looking for a different vendor just to see what's out there. I have already sent an email to the board president and some of the admin team about my reservations, specifically with Sodexo. I think that is information that the board needs to review and to sort of take into account. I know, you know, Sodexo is much larger than probably their presence in the state, and that, you know, that's not necessarily in the local team's control. But they are an institution that, you know, manages prisons outside and overseas, and I know that they had a settlement case with the city of New York not even 10 years ago about overcharging for the food that they provided school districts in New York. I think those are all things that kind of worry me about the new partnership. So I'd like to see what other vendors applied. And I really personally think for something like this that the more local a vendor can be, the better. I think, you know, if we're going to go with somebody new, if they could be representative of our state and our local food systems, that would be absolutely like the way to go. But yeah, I just have some of those reservations, and I'd like that for to be taken into account when we decide if we transition. That was it.
Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez.
Do you have context on the other vendors in locality?
Yeah, so I think there were a couple questions or comments there. So for one, we can certainly take a look at the communication, Ms. Gonzalez, and provide some feedback there as it relates to some other instances from other vendors or other clients. So when we talk about local and we look through the RFP process, we were really talking about food sourcing, local food sourcing, but we also have, and for those of you who have been on the board a while, you know that we have vendors, a lot of the same vendors, but a lot of the same contracts. We've had Aramark, we've had K-12 Elior, we've had Sodexo in the past. But the local food sourcing is really something that was particularly important when we looked at the preference areas and the proposals. So that's what we reviewed. We do know that Sodexo is a large company.
Right.
However, realistically, the transition is going to include a lot of local staff. It's a large operation. We're talking about a July 1 implementation. Today is June 6th. We also have, you know, the leadership team will be local as they'll be working in our schools. But when we went through the RFP process, we were looking more so at the local food sourcing because, as you all recall, during the pandemic, we had some issues getting some food at some times, and we had to look at other avenues. It was coming from downstate Illinois, from K-12 Elior, most of it. So that is what we incorporated as far as local. It's a food product, the volume and quantity that we're looking at on utilizing and purchasing on a regular basis. We need to make sure that's available to us. But we will look into the other concerns that Ms. Gonzalez referenced.
If I could just say, when Sodexo was here before, Brian, you could help me with this. Wasn't that complaint there back then about New York or something?
I don't recall that. I know when I started here back in '93, I think Marriott was the food service vendor.
Right.
Now Sodexo.
Right.
And they were here several years.
Right.
Maybe until early to mid-2000s.
Thousands, yeah. And so, but anyway, I've heard that before, okay, what Ms. Gonzalez was talking about. But my concern, and I was going to ask it earlier today, but how much of our, well, and I guess maybe it's not even our staff, it's the current food service, right? They have a number of staff, right, that work for them. And so are those staff members going to go with the food, the vendor they're with now, or are they going to be recruited into Sodexo? And part two is, if they are not, what is the plan to make sure that the food service has the adequate staff that we need to service our students?
I can ask Tara a couple of as well, but typically the food service workers that are here are interviewed and apply for the new incoming vendor. So we've already started the process of being able to get all the contact employees now, so that the transition is smooth when it comes time to start in August. So they'll all get interviewed. They typically go right out over. I mean, this is my second switch, I think, and it's the same employees. We've had employees here for 20 years.
Okay.
So they typically go to the next vendor.
And the ones that
are already here.
come
Right.
into
So you
the
see,
district.
You're talking like
Okay.
120 employees. You can't hire that many and look for that many in the short amount of time frame. So it's just customary that they just re-interview and get rehired.
Okay.
So talks are in the works, so that
Okay.
August 14th we are ready.
Okay, very good.
Any final questions, comments, concerns?
Yeah, I'll just finish mine out. So I think we just need to make sure that we are being transparent with the community of what the definition of healthy is that we're being held to, that these meals qualify for. Aside from the concerns that Ms. Gonzalez brought up, which I am also curious to learn more, and I'll do some digging on my own, the food itself was better than what I experienced going to school here. The quality looks better than what we've seen complaints on social media for. I did speak with the students, and we're just going to be transparent, right? Like, some of the food restrictions is not a district decision. It is not a food provider decision. It is a governmental decision. So while white rice is not inherently bad, it's not necessarily going to be on the menu as much as we'll see brown rice or other items. So that's something to just keep in mind, is that we don't have control over that. The students did provide feedback that we may see some cultural items that our mom or our tias might make at home, or we might go get locally, like elote, is going to be slightly different, right? To Ms. Hannah's point, because we have to adhere to these guidelines, is not going to be as flavorful as home cooking. But in terms of what we currently have, from what I tasted today, I would feel more comfortable sending my kids to school to get school breakfast and school lunch, even despite my prior reservations of them consuming what the schools served. Nothing against the staff, right? But I had a little bit of education, a little bit of taste testing from the company, and if things check out on an appropriate side, then I'm okay with this.
Thank you. With that, call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A motion by
Second.
Ms. Lindsay, second by Ms. Hannah.
Lindsay.
All in favor, signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Meeting is adjourned.